Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's video. Kind of following up with the last few videos we've done, we're going to do another game of Is This That or Not? And we're going to do Is This Gaslighting or Not? Because gaslighting or being gaslit is something that we see a lot online and we have clients bring up a lot. So it's probably worth talking about and figuring out what is gaslighting exactly and when it's happening and what does it look like.
Yeah. So gaslighting, for people who may not be familiar with that term, is manipulating someone into questioning their own reality, their own emotions, their own experience for the purpose of the other person gaining an advantage, right? So somebody who has narcissistic qualities or who maybe even has narcissistic personality disorder might do this to make somebody question their own reality and then become dependent on the narcissist to tell them what reality is, right? It gives the narcissist an upper hand and makes them the expert in all things.
So if we were attaching names to it, if I'm the narcissist, it might be something that I would say to Jaden for him to question his own thought process, but for something like for him to then rely on me because I'm like that all-knowing figure.
Correct.
Because
right?
he doesn't know. He's not. Let me tell you how reality actually is.
Correct. Right.
So there could be all kinds of, I was going to say subtle, but I think it's not so subtle, things that I might say to make him question, do I actually know what I'm doing? Or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Well, I think it usually starts out subtle, but once you're kind of in that headspace and after it's happened for so long, I think people do get really overt with it and you just buy it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
The person who's being gaslit often feels confused, often struggles with their self-esteem, and feels like they're dependent on everybody around them to tell them what reality is. Should I feel angry? Is that okay that I feel angry? Is this a situation that I should feel angry? How does this shirt look? Everybody needs to tell me because I couldn't possibly figure that out on my own. Right? Some of those kinds of things. I thought I would maybe share with you guys a little bit of the history of how this term started. Cause
Sure, it is a weird word.
It is. It's like a super weird word. But there was this play that was created in 1938, and the play is called Gaslight. And in it, there is a husband and a wife, and the husband is trying to steal from his wife. And so he does a bunch of things to make her feel like she must be crazy. So he goes and he every day will turn the lights down in the house. He'll dim the lights. And then when she says something about the lights being dim, he'll tell her, they're not dim. Like, this is all in your mind. You're making this up. You must be going crazy, right? And he does this over and over and over again so that she starts to question her own sanity and doesn't see that he's manipulating her so that he can steal from her.
What was he
Yeah,
stealing?
that's my question.
I don't know.
I'm like thinking cookies. Like, I didn't say cookies. I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
he never made cookies. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I don't actually know. I haven't seen the play, but that's kind of the premise of it. That's where this term comes from.
Very interesting. Because now in my mind I'm sitting here thinking, how calculated is this? And how sometimes it becomes maybe a second nature and isn't calculated. But that's something for me to contemplate throughout the rest of my life. So
Well, and I think that that's kind of a complicated question.
Sure.
Because people who tend to have like more antisocial personality type traits, it is calculated. They know they're doing it. And for other people, they often don't know they're doing this. Often, lots of us gaslight people around us and we don't even realize that we're doing it, right? And we don't maybe do it in a malicious way, but it is because we want to be seen as the smarter or authority figure and be seen as right. So, I mean, sometimes we do this and we don't realize we are.
Sure.
So, on to the game. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
See how ready?
So, here's the first one. It's like you don't even care about me. Do you even love me? Gaslighting or not gaslighting?
Should we take turns going first?
Sure, go ahead.
No, not gaslighting.
Not gaslighting. Why?
Because I think that this is more like it's not it lacks kind of what you were talking about earlier with like the play, right? No, you're not trying to convince anyone that they're
crazy.
Yeah, you're not trying to change their view of reality. This is more like an expression of like my own anxiety. If I'm saying this, that's just me being anxious.
Right. We see this a lot with people who have anxious attachment, and then often their partners come in and say, like,
They're gaslighting
they're
me.
gaslighting me, right? This isn't necessarily gaslighting. This is a sign of maybe some emotional immaturity, or maybe some anxious attachment, but not necessarily narcissism. Now, on the other hand, this can turn to narcissism pretty quickly, right? Because then if it turns to, well, if you loved me, you would, and then fill in the blank, that would tend to be a narcissistic or a gaslighting kind of a statement, because then you're telling the other person that they can't even determine their own behavior, right? Whatever their behavior is, it's wrong, because if they loved you, they would be doing X, Y, and Z.
And you're telling them how they feel, right? You obviously don't love me, because if you did, you would do this.
Right. So it can turn into gaslighting, but it's not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's one of the hard parts that's splitting hairs, where some of what we're doing here is trying to let folks know what like the actual clinical picture looks like.
Where that line is.
And the splitting the hair, because this very well could be one. But in this instance, it's not.
Yeah,
right.
Phrased slightly differently, it is.
Yeah, sure.
Right, when it overreaches, but an expression of, I don't feel like you love me, again, just more of an anxious kind of an expression than gaslighting.
Okay.
All right, here's the second one. It's not that big of a deal. You're just too sensitive. Gaslighting or not gaslighting?
Your turn.
I don't know all the context, but I feel like this is a pretty simple yes. And maybe it was the word just that threw it out, or calling somebody too sensitive. But the context to me indicates that there's probably more going on, and I'm saying this to make you question your reality of this situation.
Yeah,
right?
It's telling you your reaction was inappropriate because you're this.
Yeah,
right.
Very good. So are we right?
Yeah,
Does that
absolutely.
sound right?
And narcissists often use this tactic to make it so they don't have to take responsibility for their actions, right? Their actions are not the problem. Your emotions are the problem.
You're just being too sensitive.
You're just being too sensitive.
Yeah. It's not my fault I cheated on you. You're just being too sensitive about this, right? That kind of thing is something that's pretty typical for us to see in a narcissistic relationship.
Too sensitive.
Gaslighting or not gaslighting? That's not what I remember. So you're in a conversation with somebody and that's what they say. That's not what I remember.
This one's Cher's turn.
I have to answer them too. This one actually is not necessarily gaslighting. We all have different perceptions of things that happen in our lives. We could experience the exact same thing and have different things that we remember about it. Having somebody remember the situation differently than you and they express that, that's not gaslighting. It turns into gaslighting when they tell you things like, you are crazy for remembering it that way, or it couldn't possibly have happened like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So, like, you're remembering that wrong. Would that strays more into gaslighting territory?
Mm-hmm. Right, when you try to tell the other person that their experience is not what it was.
Sure.
Right? Like, the lights in the house weren't getting any dimmer.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. That's kind of where that comes in.
Yeah, you remembered that wrong. You're going crazy. Yeah. Okay, I could see that.
Right. All right, here's our last one. This one is, I only cheated on you because you don't give me what I need.
I feel like that's a solid yes.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question on that one.
That's a solid guess, but I would say we see this in a million different forms when our clients come in.
Yeah, it may not be as intense as cheating. It may be something different.
Mm-hmm. It may be something like, well, I didn't tell you about this thing that I did because I was just trying to save your feelings. I didn't want to hurt your feelings, so I had to lie to you. I had to mislead you because you wouldn't have been able to handle it if I had told you the truth. We hear things like that a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a real, like a misplacement of responsibility, right? I only did this, but because of you.
Right.
Right? I did this for you or because of you or for your own good. But all the implication is always, I am the smart, wise person in the situation, and I just had to do this because you couldn't possibly do it yourself.
I think for me, the yuckiest is look at the sophistication on the concluding part of that sentence it was for your benefit, right? that just feels so wrong.
Yeah.
I did this to protect you so that you wouldn't feel hurt or whatever. And it's like, so you caused hurt to protect hurt?
Yeah, it sets up a really dangerous dynamic where you
Yeah.
can kind of do whatever you want. Potentially things like cheating or things like big negative things in the relationship, and be like, the other person could totally be bought in that they're doing this for me, for my own protection.
Right.
Uh-huh.
The really sad thing about this one is that the escalation in this kind of gaslighting gets so dangerous, because in the beginning it may be something like, I didn't tell you I was texting this person because I didn't want to hurt your feelings, right? That's a pretty easy one for us to buy into. But at the clear other end of the spectrum of this, I've seen this escalate and escalate to the point where the person is then saying to themselves, when he hits me, I can't fall down in that direction because that would hurt me more and then he would feel bad. Right?
Whew.
Right. So you can see how gaslighting, like some of these things, like they're kind of questionable, they kind of ride that line, but you can see how over time this makes somebody start to question their reality so much that they don't really even feel like their own individual person anymore. It's like anything that they think and feel is wrong, and the narcissist is the authority figure on all things. So gaslighting can be kind of scary, and I think it's important to not over-label gaslighting, because we see that a lot right
Sure.
now, but I think it's also important to recognize when it is happening and what kind of rides that line.
Yeah, it seems like a slippery slope.
Yeah, and it's a very stressful one. Being on the outside of it, I'm sure it's even more stressful on the inside, right?
It really makes you question your reality.
Yeah. So if you recognize that this was happening to you, how do you like maybe inch back some of that, I don't know, power in the relationship or the control, I guess?
I think that that's a really good question, and this is not an easy thing to do, especially considering how far this has gone and how much gaslighting you've been exposed to. So one of the things that I would say is really important is that recognizing that whatever your thoughts and feelings are, they're valid. And when somebody starts telling you that your thoughts and feelings are the problem, you know you have to create some space for yourself to have your own experience, validate yourself. And when somebody starts engaging in this kind of talk around you, there has to be a way to set a limit. There's not a use fighting about this, right?
Sure.
Because if you fight with somebody who's gaslighting you, they're going to continue to gaslight you until you come to the conclusion that, like, yeah, I'm just crazy. And so sitting and fighting about it isn't going to help. Instead, it has to be something along the lines of, look, I can't talk about this like this anymore, or this is as far as this can go. This conversation has to stop, and either we stop talking about this, or I have to leave the room, or we can't talk for a couple of days, right? Setting some kind of a limit that just stops the gaslighting. You're never going to outsmart or out-talk the person who is gaslighting you, and so it's not a good idea to try. You're not going to convince them to come around to your way of thinking.
Sure.
So your only option really is to set a limit.
I like that. It comes back to that idea, right? There's no wrong feelings. They're just our responses. There's wrong reactions, but not wrong feelings, and like learning to validate that in yourself.
Right. Behavior can be a problem, but feelings themselves are not.
Sure.
And it's okay to express them. That's the other thing. Which maybe is that space that you have to create, right? Because if you express it and then you get gaslit, you're not going to want to, but that's that validation piece. So maybe you create the space so you can express it. But it takes a long time because you're also dealing with somebody in the situation that's not just you, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, thanks for the education. I need to watch the play.
Yeah,
Want to know
go
what he
on.
was stealing.
Let us know.
We'll have a movie
yeah.
night.
Yeah, there we go. Fun lunch.
Thanks everybody for joining us for this video. If this is a topic that you are interested in, check out some of our more recent videos. We talked a lot about narcissism and gaslighting and some of these topics. So thanks for joining us. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Have a good one.